10 straight nights of U.S. strikes on Iran, and tonight, for the first time, the Pentagon has put names to the American dead. If you're just joining us, a June agreement briefly cooled the U.S.-Iran war, but that lull broke in July. U.S. strikes expanded across Iran, including Bushehr and Darkhovin, while the Strait of Hormuz turned back into a battlefield. Mediators are still trying to keep a negotiating channel open, even as the fight now mixes nuclear infrastructure risk, port and blockade pressure, and attacks on U.S. and allied positions.
This is Iran War Daily. Tonight, 2 soldiers now named, a nuclear plant the watchdog won't condemn, and Gulf bases catching return fire. Stick with us.
PBS News writes,
the U.S. military carried out a 10th consecutive night of strikes on Iran on Monday, the Central Command said. Iran's army said it hit back, targeting U.S. assets in Kuwait and Bahrain. At least 2 U.S. soldiers were killed over the weekend in an Iranian attack on a U.S. base in Jordan, and another is listed as missing in action.
10th consecutive night of U.S. strikes on Iran. That's Central Command's own count Monday. And Iran's army says it hit back at U.S. assets in Kuwait and Bahrain.
Kuwait and Bahrain. Those are the addresses. The retaliation stopped being a forecast and started landing on named bases.
The casualty numbers are getting harder, too. At least 2 soldiers killed at a base in Jordan, 1 more in Iraq after a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone, and 1 listed missing. Nearly 100 injured across bases this month, per U.S. officials to CBS.
And overnight, Jordan says it knocked down 5 more Iranian drones. No casualties that time. The Revolutionary Guards owning it, saying they were aiming at a housing complex for U.S. forces near Rukban. So, the interim deal is now officially rubble.
A week ago, this was resumed fighting around Hormuz. Now it's 10 nights of strikes, with retaliation spread across 3 host countries. The military track has widened geographically. Nobody's formally severed the diplomatic one, but nobody's feeding it either.
If contacts are still live while Iran is hitting Bahrain and Kuwait, what exactly are the mediators proposing to do with that? You can't paper over a base attack with a 1-page memo.
One thing I'd be careful about, the Kuwait and Bahrain target claims still run through Iranian state sources. The strikes, CENTCOM confirms. The specific hits inside those 2 Gulf states. I want a second reference outside Tehran before I call them landed. PBS NewsHour with John Gambrell.
The United States military said late Monday it was carrying out its 10th consecutive night of strikes on Iran in a push to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The renewed bombings followed the death of another American service member and came after Iran launched attacks on American allies Kuwait, Jordan, and Bahrain, home of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet.
10th consecutive night, per U.S. Central Command's own social post, and CENTCOM says the goal plainly: further degrade the Iranian capabilities used to attack commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
Reopen the strait. That's the whole war in 3 words. The strikes exist because a 5th of the world's seaborne oil moves through that gap, and it's contested right now.
And the sequence matters. CENTCOM says these strikes followed the death of another American service member and came after Iran hit Kuwait, Jordan, and Bahrain. Bahrain being home to the Navy's 5th Fleet.
So Iran is now landing on the 5th Fleet's front door. The retaliation I kept saying would find an address, it found one. Bahrain, Kuwait.
I'd hold the line on that, though. CENTCOM confirms the strikes it's running. Iran's claims about what it hit at those Gulf sites still come mostly from Iranian state media. I'm keeping those ledgers separate.
Fair. But even the buried line in this piece admits glimmers of hope on the diplomatic front while Night 10 is underway. 10 nights of bombing and someone still calling the channel alive?
That's the question I want someone to push. Is any mediator proposal actually getting a public response from either side? Or is suspended quietly becoming permanent while the strikes run?
Ask the war risk underwriters that. When Bahrain and Kuwait are targets, Lloyd's isn't reading press releases. They're repricing every Gulf hull and contractor. That number tells you if anyone believes the glimmer.
Mehr News Agency writes,
The IAEA is looking into reports of an overnight attack on the construction site of a planned nuclear power plant in Darkhovin, Iran. The facility is in the very early stages of construction and contains no nuclear material when last visited by the IAEA.
The IAEA has now addressed the Darkhovin strike directly, on its own X account, reported through Mehr. Grossi's agency says the site is in early construction, held no nuclear material when last inspected, and poses no radiological risk. What it did not say is the word condemn.
Right. A strike on a nuclear power plant, and the nuclear watchdog musters up a call for military restraint in the vicinity. That's the strongest verb Grossi could find.
And note the split screen. The Atomic Energy Organization of Iran calls it terrorist, criminal, a violation of international law. The IAEA calls it a report it's looking into. Same event, wildly different tone.
Darkhovin isn't Boucher. No Russian fuel, no Russian staff, no live reactor, empty concrete in Khuzestan. So the radiological risk really is low. But if the agency won't name a strike on nuclear infrastructure as a strike, what exactly is it there to do?
That's the important signal, and it's separate from anything Tehran or Washington is claiming. The guardrail system around Iran's nuclear sites is under real strain, and the loudest thing the IAEA said this weekend was what it left out. From Stars and Stripes.
The Pentagon on Monday identified the two active-duty Army soldiers killed in Jordan late last week as First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25, and Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19. They were serving at Muwafaq Salti Air Base when it came under Iranian attack on Friday. The Defense Department is investigating, according to a statement.
The Pentagon on Monday named the two soldiers killed at Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan on July 18. First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan, 25, of Iviwa Beach, Hawaii, and Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19, of Carrollton, Texas, both Army Air Defense Artillery. That's the authority I wanted on the record. A name, a unit, a base, and the Defense Department attributing it. Feehan out of Fort Bragg, Gonzalez out of Ansbach. A third service member is still being identified from remains found near the site, per CENTCOM.
Read the unit assignments again, Sarah. Air Defense Artillery. These were the people whose entire job is stopping Iranian missiles and drones from hitting that base. Iran put a missile through the crew manning the shield. And Gonzalez was 19. 19 at a forward air defense position taking incoming fire. That's who's actually standing in the gap out there.
17 U.S. troops killed now across this war, per Stars and Stripes, with another death in Iraq on Saturday. These two are the first identified American dead. The count has names now, not just a number.
If Iran War Daily helps you stay clear on a fast-moving story, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you're listening. It's a small gesture that helps other people find the show. Links to every story we covered today are in the show notes, so if one caught your attention, you can dig into the original reporting there. That's Iran War Daily for today. This is a Lantern podcast.